Welcome to Ask Us Anything. We asked you to ask us questions and you did it, and we appreciate it. I have quite a big list here, and my name is Nick Hylla. I'm the Executive Director of the Midwest Renewable Energy Association, and it's a brand new year, 2026, so we're going to think about the future in a lot of your questions, address the past a little bit, and jump right in. So I think I have about 20 or more questions that you all submitted. So thanks for your interest, and I will do my best to answer your questions. We reviewed these as a staff, came up with some ideas, and but some of my responses may be just my own. We'll see how this goes. So let's start. I've organized a little bit here. There's basically four categories of questions: policy and advocacy questions, technology questions, questions about our training program, question about our energy program, and just general MREA questions. So we're going to start right off the bat with policy questions, big policies questions here in 2026. So the first one: what are the current laws, regulations concerning community solar? Well, let's say that there isn't a single law or regulation around community solar. Community solar becomes available through policy efforts. So it's not something that is commonly offered, but it is something that becomes available when either a utility or a public service commission or a state forwards a policy that enables community solar. So let's just start with the basics. There are a number of defined community solar programs. We're going to start with the most kind of authentic community solar program, which is a program that allows any ratepayer, so a customer of a utility, to invest in a solar energy system that's not on their property, or that might be on their property and that other people invest in. Why does it take policy to make that happen? It's because the way that a subscriber to a community solar garden or array or farm is paid is through a credit on their utility bill. So the utility has to be involved in giving you a credit based on the production of the solar facility in which you are a subscriber or an investor. And to make that happen, Public Service Commission or a state legislature or the utility themselves has to enable that. They have to say, like, yes, we're willing to do that, or yes, now we have to do that because a policy is passed. And so one of the first states in the Midwest to do that was Minnesota. They passed legislation enabling community solar, and that required Xcel Energy to mediate those payments on the utility bill. In any of those community solar programs passed by state legislatures, there are rules and guidelines. So the amount of subscribers that have to be residential customers, the percentage of the solar farm that one subscriber can own, the size of the solar farm, the way that the credits per kilowatt hour are compensated on the bill, etc. And Minnesota has had a number of versions of their community solar garden law that have changed rules, including extending benefits to low to moderate income customers and increasing the size of solar farms and decreasing or increasing the compensation rates. They have the largest and fastest growing community solar program in the country, though the program is changing. Another state in the Midwest that has enabled community solar is Illinois. 2026 will likely be a big year for community solar in Illinois, and I see announcements for projects coming online on schools and municipalities that schools and municipalities are investors in, or that that these institutions are hosting and getting lease payments from. There are also community solar programs that are offered by utilities. Some of the leading utilities are cooperative utilities that offer subscription services to their members. All of the rural electric co-ops are kind of like member owned technically. Every member owns a portion of the balance sheet. And so those programs can be really good for rural electric co-ops because they're basically crowd financing their investments and they're distributing those benefits to their members. Wisconsin has some proposed community solar legislation. Its likelihood of passage is low, but it would be a great a great program. That program, for example, limits the project size to 5 megawatts. And it has some other requirements, so like some pretty stiff requirements for local approval of projects, but would be a very good bill. One of the outcomes of Minnesota's community solar law was a lot of commercial investment and commercial development, because if you can imagine, if you are a business that can invest in an offsite solar farm that dramatically reduces your electricity bills, that is a competitive advantage for you as a business, and that attracts businesses to service territories where community solar farms are operating. Also, of course, supports local landowners like farmers to host these solar farms because they get long-term lease payments. So anyway, that is really the first type of solar farm. We got another question about, have there been any changes for renters not needing individual meters? Is this the same as community solar? Well, essentially, yeah, that's kind of community solar. If you live in a multi-unit housing complex and the owner of that complex puts a large solar array on the roof or on the property and distributes the benefits to all the tenants, yeah, that's community solar. One of the challenges there has been being able to aggregate all of the energy use and all of the energy production into one meter and to distribute that to tenants, because if the electrical infrastructure is such that every apartment is individually metered, then how do you, and the solar array is on a different meter, like how do you then provide the compensation to renters for the production from the unit? So in Wisconsin, we've had some progress there that allows for meter aggregation on multi-unit dwellings. And so there's some possibility in 2026 that we will see multi-unit housing developments have large solar arrays that distribute benefits to their tenants. And so I hope to see more of that in Wisconsin. So that is another aspect of community solar. Illinois also has some enabling legislation there through like virtual net metering and metering aggregation. So we might see more there, and hopefully more utilities will be amenable to these type of arrangements as demand for electricity grows and cost grows and there is shortness in supply. There are other types of community solar. One really interesting one in Wisconsin is the Wisconsin Solar Share Cooperative. That's a really interesting model since we don't have any legislation that has enabled community solar. What this model does is allows investors to be bondholders and to directly invest as members of the co-op into larger scale solar arrays and receive kind of the investment interest from their bonds from being an investor. So it's basically crowdsourcing solar arrays. So Solar Share Wisconsin is, if you haven't heard of them, a place to look up. If you have money, you're looking to diversify your investments, they would be a great organization to look at. They've done many megawatts of solar farms, have a growing set of investors, and do a very kind of unique way of offering community solar in Wisconsin where we don't have enabling legislation. Related question here is there much interest for solar within the real estate community? And the question is yes, this is a very much a growing market need for education for two reasons. First, because of large-scale solar development and community solar development, many realtors are looking at these projects to say, like, is land valuable for a solar farm? Let's take Wisconsin right here where we're based in the MREA is based. Our main office is based here in Portage County, Wisconsin. We have 2 solar farms that have been approved and construction has just begun that total in one site to 1.3 gigawatts. Now, how do these projects get developed? Well, the developers make agreements with landowners that typically pay somewhere around $1,000 per acre to the landowner for a period of 30 to 40 years, with usually some escalator over time. Now, if you're a corn or soybean farmer and you're used to getting a little less than $200 per acre for corn and soy, and you don't know what the future holds with trade wars and what happened in futures markets, and someone says, we can give you $1,000 per acre for 40 years, that's a great investment. And from a realty standpoint, that is a kind of like big potential long-term revenue source that locks up real estate. So there's interest there. And so we're definitely seeing more interest in realty from that aspect. But also, we've now had 10 straight years of nearly exponential growth of solar development on homes and businesses and farm fields. And now there's two interests. One is, okay, I'm selling this house and it has a solar array on it. What is the value of that solar array? How do I communicate that value to the customer? What is the potential liability of that solar array? How do I communicate that to the customer? So we're seeing a lot of interest from realtors now in how to kind of think about and evaluate and communicate values around solar energy all throughout the marketplace. And this will be more and more common, and it will get more and more complicated as many more solar energy arrays are being installed with energy storage also, which actually complicates the picture and adds another layer of value to the home or the business because of both the resiliency aspect of continuous power supply when the grid is out, but also other potential benefits such as reducing power use during times of high electricity, peak electricity times, and also aggregating these arrays to provide grid value and compensation through what is known as virtual power plants. So MREA has been talking to realtors, and you will see in 2026 we'll have some new education opportunities specifically aimed at realtors. Okay, here's a big one. How is MREA thinking about the energy requirements of data centers? So I'm sure over the last year you've heard a lot about artificial intelligence, you've heard a lot about data centers, and you've probably heard quite a bit about data centers driving up electricity prices. So I will say in the kind of clean energy advocacy space, there are a few positions that MREA is aligned with. The first would be called Beyonce, not the singer-songwriter, but bring your own new clean energy. Data centers use a tremendous amount of energy. Not only do they use a tremendous amount of energy, but most of the time, at least to the public and oftentimes to public service commissions, the amount of energy is unspecified. And the degree of data center development is unspecified. And so if we just put a bookmark there and say, like, why is that a problem? Well, there's basically two problems there. The first is that how do we plan for a new large electrical load in the electricity system if we can't define it? If we can't define how much a facility will use, how long they'll use it, and how many facilities they will be. So one answer to these type of questions is, okay, well, if you want to bring a new large electricity load onto the grid in this area, well, bring your note. We all know that technology companies now are driving the stock market. They have more money than any kind of like single sector of the economy has ever had throughout history. So bring that money to bear and invest in your own new clean energy to power your data center. So that's an interesting concept. We're aligned with it. The question there really is, how do you make that happen? Can clean energy actually provide the power needs of these large data centers? So I think there are some questions there. The second policy is pay for all the energy you use and all the new infrastructure that is required to be built. And we're seeing some policy movement there because the second problem is that in our regulated utility system, we, through our regulatory bodies, public utility commissions in each state, we support utility investments by protecting utility rates of return. Utilities make money by building things, And when they see this potential large load growth, that is a big opportunity for their investors to invest money to build things and to make a protected rate of return over the life of whatever they built. So whether it's a substation or new distribution lines or transmission or a new generator for 25, 30, 40, 50 years, they can make this investment and get a protected rate of return of, in Wisconsin, for example, up to 10%, in Iowa, around 7.5%. But that's a significant amount of money and a significant way to make it a secured investment. And so the utilities are always very supportive of these large new loads and maybe even inflate the potential load growth so that they can build more stuff. But who pays for all of that infrastructure rate of return? We do, as ratepayers. And so another policy that we're aligned with is pay for it all yourself. If you're proposing a data center and you're telling the Public Utility Commission that you're going to need this power for 30 years, well, pay for it for 30 years. And we've seen, for example, in Ohio, for example, state passed a law that was like, okay, we'll build new stuff, but you have to pay 80% of its value. Any data center that's proposed, any proposal that's brought to the table at the Public Utility Commission, if this is the justification for new infrastructure, that customer needs to pay 80% of it. And one interesting thing happened. A lot less things started being proposed. So that is an interesting way for a state legislative body or a Public Utility Commission to start to really right-size what the expectations are and to make sure that costs for the new infrastructure are being placed on the users that are justifying or requiring the new investments and not spread out to all ratepayers. So I think those two policies are good policies, things that every single state public representative and utility commissioner should be thinking about, because the worst case scenario is we build a bunch of infrastructure and the data center only runs for 3 to 5 years. It doesn't use as much energy as it says it was going to. And then we're stuck with all of the costs. All of this built infrastructure gets spread on all repairs and electricity prices go up for everybody. These are big concerns because nobody knows necessarily what the future is going to be for these data centers, as we have seen models come out of China, for example, that use significantly less energy. Though the projections right now are that bigger is better and build more and more energy intensive, the last thing we want to do is build a bunch of infrastructure that we all end up having to pay for, because it just raises everybody's electricity rates, homes and businesses, makes businesses less competitive, gives homes bigger liability for electricity costs and less money to spend. I think there's some bigger questions also about data centers, which is, how should we think from a regulatory construct about data centers? They're not typical large load users. They're not like a paper mill that will employ people and create a bunch of local economic activity, or a manufacturing plant. They hire very few people. They operate with very few people. And they have what I would say is a tenuous benefit proposition to society. The biggest benefit that data centers are offering is kind of like workforce reduction for corporations, which doesn't necessarily translate into good local economic development opportunity for hosting data centers. So I think that there are some real challenges with data centers. This is like a make or break moment currently across the country for how utilities and regulators and local jurisdictions are engaging in this conversation. And the MREA is looking into a lot. One of the things that we will be doing this year, we started last year and we'll be doing more of this year, is bringing information, presentations, and discussions to townships all throughout the Midwest about energy use, energy resources, including large-scale solar and wind development, local opportunities for customer-owned generation and energy storage, and the energy impact and how jurisdictions should be thinking about data centers. So if you're out there and you want to bring resources to your township and have an open discussion about this stuff, we're ready to come to you with resources and help clarify some of these big questions around what the future of energy looks like. One thing that I will predict for 2026 is 2026 will be the year that everybody starts paying attention to their electricity bill. We have for many years at the MREA, one thing that is just astounding when you work at an organization like the MREA is how little people think about electricity, how little people know what a kilowatt hour is, how much it costs, how the electricity system works. Those days are gone. They're behind us, just like 2025. Everybody will start to learn more about electricity because electricity prices will be going up, and the big conversation will be what's the cause, and a lot of it will be likely data centers. Which brings us to the next question. What is causing electrical rate increases, and what can we do about it? Oh, that's a complicated question. There are a number of causes of electrical rate increases, but let me just kind of back up a little bit and just say, like, why are we in this position? How did we get into a position where the thing that we rely upon most in modern society, if you were to make a list of the things that you are most dependent on in modern society, at the top of that list should be electricity. Let me prove it to you. Just take a moment. Think about, from this moment going forward, losing all access to electricity. How would that change your life? How would that change society? Electricity is fundamental to our society and to kind of like the peaceable advancement of everything that we kind of invest in and care about. So how is it that this thing that we so much depend on is so much of a mystery and so little people think about it or understand it? This is the question of our time. And so when it comes to rate increases, we've arrived at this place because the model that we use to develop electricity, for the most part, now there are a number of models, but for the most electrons that are bought and sold in the grid come from investor-owned utilities that are regulated by state regulatory bodies. These investor-owned utilities are private for-profit companies that are granted a monopoly service territory and a monopoly privilege over their customers in exchange for regulation. Now, if you think about how this has worked over time, the way that it has worked is kind of like guaranteeing rates of return for investors to keep the capital flowing and spreading the costs onto everybody. And since every customer is an electricity customer, it almost truly is everybody. Everybody that owns or rents a home, owns or leases a commercial property, everybody has an electric meter. They have a contract with the utility called a tariff. That's just a fancy word for a contract that you never negotiated. That contract was negotiated by the utility and the Public Service Commission that negotiated the terms of this contract to allow you to use electricity. Well, that has kept electricity prices low for a very long time, and that has kept people not necessarily paying attention. One, because there's nothing you can do about it except use less of it if you can. You can't negotiate with the utility. So many people think the utility is a public entity. They're not. They're private entities unless it's a municipal utility or cooperative utility, which is a private utility that you are a member of. But that has kept costs down. The question becomes now that we're kind of at the tail end of much of our old infrastructure investment, coal-fired power plants, nuclear power plants, hydro dams, all of these things, for the most part, in the United States, are at kind of their end life and need to be revitalized and extended. With the nuclear plants, that's possible. Potentially retired early because they're not cost competitive, or the infrastructure is just at the end of its life for hydro dams. So we're in this kind of like period of reinvestment. Much of that reinvestment has been done with actually the most affordable currently source of electricity, solar and wind. Solar and wind have been the number one new electricity addition in this country for nearly 3 years straight. And much of the new development has also been natural gas. We've replaced a lot of our coal-fired power with natural gas. Most states in the country rely, including Wisconsin, rely primarily on natural gas for their electricity. And so if you think about the situation we're in, there are multiple factors that are increasing the electricity cost. The first is the need for new investment in new natural gas plants, extending the life of coal plants, extending the life of nuclear plants, building new wind and solar and energy storage to compensate for load growth and plant retirements, building new distribution system infrastructure, which is also aged, building new transmission infrastructure. So there is just this kind of like period of reinvestment that we were in. And I'll ask you a question. Are things getting cheaper to build or more expensive to build? Things are expensive to build. That has to do with labor costs. It has to do with supply chain issues. We are in kind of this global trade war that does not make things cheaper. It makes things more expensive. And then finally, you layer on top of this impending and actual new load growth from data centers, and you're talking about this sum of all of these different forces that are going to push and are pushing electricity prices up faster than we have seen in our lifetimes. So again, I'll reiterate, the age of ignoring your utility bill is over, and the importance of organizations like the MREA and citizens utility boards and other groups that are out there talking about electricity and electricity regulation, electricity policy has never been more important. What can you do to avoid electricity price increases? Well, energy efficiency, rooftop solar, energy storage. Get involved in energy policy discussions. Make it a political priority. Okay. Why does there seem to be so much resistance to large-scale solar development, and what is MREA doing in this climate? Oh, that's a tough one. There surely has been, and probably will be local resistance to large-scale solar, and there has been legislative efforts to try to address it, centralizing kind of the decision-making authority, such as in like Michigan, Wisconsin, Illinois. There'll be a push in Iowa this year, likely to do the same. And why is this happening? What is the response to? And I guess it's somewhat complicated, but I'll say there are a few kind of clear drivers of local resistance. The first is just general, this kind of like not in my backyard thinking, which can be justified. If a data center was coming to your backyard, would you be happy about it? Probably not. With solar, one of the biggest arguments of not in my backyard is this kind of like taking farmland, right? So people are used to these kind of like pastoral farm landscapes. They've grown up with it. They like the rural nature. And the fear becomes that we're going to change that in this kind of like industrial solar landscape. Much of that fear, of course, is like not necessarily based in what the aesthetics of solar farms are in some cases and can be. Many solar farms now are built with native vegetation underneath. They move very slightly throughout the day like this to track the sun. They're usually less than 15 feet tall at the tallest part of the solar farm. They're kind of built to follow the landscape. You can plant kind of visual vegetation breaks so that you barely see solar farms. They make no noise. They make no pollution. They actually can, with native vegetation, restore habitat. And probably one of the biggest benefits is they generate a significant amount of local revenue for the townships and the counties where they're sited. Again, I'll just go to where I live, Portage County, 1.3 gigawatts of solar in this county. Because of the way that the energy revenue is generated in Wisconsin through Wisconsin state law, those two solar farms will increase the county's tax collection by 10%. Now, think about a 10% increase in county tax collection. What could you use that for? You could use that for police, fire, school, roads, parks, any number of things. They actually support in many instances family farms, because if you can take the back 40 or the back 80 and lease it out to a solar company and get paid $1,000 per acre for 40 years, that gives you the revenue needed to overcome the peaks and valleys of pricing and any other agricultural um, aspect that you might be invested in. But the resistance is real because of this concern about the changing landscape. I think the other big part of this is the lack of local control. And the way that many solar projects are developed is kind of just starts with agreements with landowners before anybody has ever heard of anything coming. All of a sudden, they're having coffee at the local coffee shop. It's like, oh, I'm going to lease my land to this solar farm. And they're like, what solar farm? Oh, I don't know. And then nobody really knows until there's a town meeting and there's a map. And everybody looks at the map and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm right in the middle of this map. Nobody talked to me about it. And it's very kind of opaque process in many instances that creates a lot of local resistance. And in many states, such as Wisconsin, there's not much that local units of government can do about it. But what we have seen is local units of government that anticipate these solar farms, that prepare and that work with the developers and negotiate with developers, including through resistance at the siting body, which is usually the Public Utility Commission in the state, and through public comment and through litigation to, or not necessarily, you don't have to get to litigation, it could get there, threats of litigation, but really to negotiate joint development agreements that increase the benefits to local towns, including like good neighbor payments, decommissioning agreements, requirements for vegetation, scholarships, funding for schools. In Portage County, the solar developer is funding 2 wildlife researchers at the local university to study the habitat impacts of the vegetation used in the solar farm. So many of the challenges with large-scale siting come with kind of this local engagement, lack of local engagement. Now, local engagement can be hard, and it's an investment on the part of groups like the MREA and the solar developers, but I haven't seen, I understand the resistance to local solar farms from a local perspective, and really wanting to have a more transparent process, wanting more information, wanting more say. On the flip side, I have never seen a greater local development, economic development opportunity than large scale solar development. When you think about the support for local landowners, you think about the tax revenue generated for townships and counties that can be reinvested. And you think about its impact in reducing electricity prices over time. Solar has a fuel cost of 0. Once the farm is built, every time the sun shines, it produces electricity. So again, one thing that MREA is doing more is bringing this type of information to local townships, engaging people, helping them understand the benefits, costs, drawbacks, requirements of these solar farms. And I'm hoping we can use this as to open up the discussion about our energy future and really start to, as a society, truly understand the costs of our energy use and the paths forward. All right. How has the current administration affected the MREA and the states? Oh, well, I think in some ways the impact, 2026 will be a telling year. In some ways, the impact might be overblown. There's only so much that the federal government can do to kind of curtail or slow down renewable energy development, because solar and wind and battery storage are the quickest to build and the cheapest electrons on the grid. And in a time of projected increased electricity use, it doesn't make sense from a business perspective to really do anything else. So we're going to see a significant amount of development continue. What I will say is that we went from kind of a federal champion of a clean energy transition to a detractor, and that does have some real impacts. It's definitely impacted the MREA. We if you start 3 years ago, we work a lot in the residential small commercial solar market. That market was kind of stalled out a little bit for a number of reasons, but at the same time, the Biden administration had passed some sweeping legislation in the Inflation Reduction Act, Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, CHIPS and Science Act, that not only bolstered every aspect of the clean energy kind of like market and its growth, but more specifically extended those benefits into impoverished areas and areas where there's persistent high unemployment. And MREA was really focused on that. And so we took a lot of time to hire staff and engage in negotiations and write grants and we had over $1 million of contracted grants with the federal government that were just terminated. And so that was a big rug pull, but like unquantified amounts of work that we were scaled up for. So we've definitely reduced staff and kind of like reoriented ourselves to this kind of new marketplace, which we think the solar plus storage market, as electricity prices go up and grid instability becomes an issue, you're going to see a lot of interest in customer-owned solar and energy storage. What I will say is that if the kind of anti-clean energy disposition of the current federal administration provides cover for utilities and states to roll back net metering, to make interconnection harder, to kind of like dissuade investors and dissuade businesses from investing, if this kind of intimidation factor or this giant kind of like propaganda machine is effective at that could be really hurtful. So MREA is also very focused on making sure that interconnection, net metering, stuff like virtual power plants, third-party financing, like investment structures like those continue, because that is what drives the market. Another liability is really supply chain issues, and we were seeing a manufacturing revival of all kinds of aspects of clean energy, energy storage, batteries, inverters, modules, racking, all of that. And my hope is that in this Venn diagram of whatever the two competing policies here is, that middle part of the Venn diagram is domestic manufacturing. And so one of the other telltale signs will be like, are we still committing to domestic manufacturing? How are we approaching the supply chains? How can we make sure that customers have affordable quality equipment that will last and be maintained? So lots of challenges here, but lots of opportunities. Okay. What can we do to ignite interest in conservatives to become more solar sustainably minded? We think about that all the time at the MREA, and we are a big tent organization. And for the most part, what you'll see from us a lot is what we talk about at the MREA is property rights, economics, local economic development, all of these things that I think are commonly shared, right? And so I think what we see is that the solar industry, for the most part, has become a big tent organization. If you look at states like Iowa in the Midwest, that is a state that has kind of like dominated by Republicans in the state houses and in the governor's mansion. And they have the kind of like fastest rate of clean energy deployment of any state in the Midwest, the highest percentage of wind. And I think even organizations like the Iowa Pork Producers Association has done things like saved net metering in the state. And so it's not as if I think when like looking at this question, I don't think that there is a problem with conservatives in clean energy. My short answer to this question is you got to meet people where they are. You got to talk about the benefits that they really enjoy, and you got to prove it. You got to be out there doing good work, installing good systems, and demonstrating benefits, and that's how you get people on your side. All right. Kind of a related question, what to do about anti-solar rural electric co-ops? So 75% of the electrons sold in the country are sold by investor-owned utilities that are regulated by public utility commissions, but 75% of the U.S. geography is served by rural electric co-ops. This innovation dates back to the New Deal, right? Post-Depression New Deal era, where we passed the rural utility service, or we established a rural utility service through USDA to provide zero to low interest loans to rural co-ops to help the rural America electrify, because those were areas that investor-owned utilities wouldn't touch because there weren't enough customers. There wasn't enough money to make. And so still today, all across the country, 3/4 of the nation's geography are served by these co-ops. These co-ops have a democratically elected board. They can be quite conservative. And the reason for that is that the co-ops aren't just the little distribution co-op that you know locally. They are part of a larger co-op structure that includes the generation and transmission co-ops, which provide the power to those distribution co-ops, and they have a contract arrangement there. And the generation transmission co-ops that serve the distribution co-ops all throughout the United States are they have the dirtiest power. They are the most reliant on coal. They're the most invested in coal, and they often have a disposition to reduce the amount of solar that the distribution co-ops have and reduce the amount of solar that their customers have, because these distribution co-ops need to purchase this electricity from the generation and transmission co-ops. So there are challenges there. However, there is one easy answer. Run for your co-op board. Get on here's where not all, but most energy policy is going. You can look at this new bill that passed in Illinois. They're calling it SERJA. They went from FEJA to CEJA to SERJA. And at the center of SERJA is a proposition. Let's just use the most deployable, most affordable, and most beneficial energy source. Let's be done with requiring solar, requiring wind, or requiring any of this. Let's just use the best. And the bet at the heart of that is that solar and wind and battery storage, large, small, medium, distributed, on your house, in your backyard, in the local farm field, these are the best. And we're going to prove it. And I think that bringing that type of attitude to a co-op board, where you're like, let's actually study the value to our other members when one of our members puts on solar. Let's study the actual value of community solar. Let's study the value of investing in large-scale solar and wind. Let's study the value of batteries and energy storage to reduce our co-op's purchases at peak times. Like, these questions are going to win the day. And so I would challenge you, if you're listening to this video, you're frustrated with your rural electric co-op, let's educate ourselves, get on these boards, be good people, be the kind of people that someone on the board wants to go out to coffee with. Now we're going to get into some technology questions. How have battery backup systems evolved, and what options do homes and businesses have? Oh, this might be the biggest opportunity. We've been waiting for this opportunity. 2026 is going to be a make or break year. Let's just say that we went from a small amount of options to homeowners to almost too many to think about. And there are a lot, and this comes for a number of reasons. It becomes because of consumer interest, technology advancements, and company development in other countries that are looking at USA as a market. So there is now more energy storage options for homes than I have ever seen or ever imagined. From like, contact your local installer, get a system designed, get it installed, all of that stuff, to like buy something off the internet, plug it into your wall. Not recommended. Balcony solar is kind of like what that's called. And I think I'm still at the point where, like, hey, the best, if you really want to make an investment that lasts a long time, that reduces your electricity bill, and that provides you power, continuous power supply to critical loads, work with a professional, get this thing professionally installed, inspected, interconnected. That's your best bet. Now, we'll see what happens with interconnection rules, right? We'll see what happens with power prices, because in the interconnection game, the way that the game works is like playing a game of basketball where the team you're playing against also owns the ref and owns the building you're playing in. That's how interconnection works. The utilities are in charge of interconnection. So if they really start using interconnection to reduce the amount of customers that can have their own solar energy storage, then let's revisit this conversation about interconnection. But there are plenty of options beyond Tesla Powerwall. I'm not going to list them all because I don't want to play favorites, but the question was like, I don't want to buy a Tesla Powerwall, so what else can I buy? There are a lot of good options now. So I would say talk to your local contractor, do your own research. There are a lot of things happening. Not only are there good energy storage options out there, but what some of you may have noticed is a few years ago, the SPAN breaker panel came out, which is a digital breaker panel, which allows you to monitor and like actually turn on and off loads in your house through your breaker panel. Now, many more companies have their own version of their smart panel or digital breaker panel, a whole home energy monitoring system, complete monitoring dashboards. Energy storage is going to be big this year, and here's why. What we're going to see, here's another 2026 prediction. It's already started, but we're going to see more of it, is utilities will be moving more aggressively towards time of use pricing that charges you higher rates during particular times of day. So why energy storage? Well, if you have an energy storage system in your house, unlike a generator, that storage system can be programmed to just say, never use electricity when the prices are high. It's called arbitrage. You're just avoiding high prices all the time. There are two benefits to that. The easy one is you're not paying benefits. The other one is to all of the other customers. There's more energy available during those times because you're not using it. This is like the solution to our dumb grid. Our dumb grid is put a bunch of big machines out in the countryside, wire them up to all our little machines, and do not control the demand side. Just produce a lot of supply and have extra capacity, so when the demand goes crazy, we have enough power there. Well, what if you could control the demand side? We can. We just choose not to. There are programs out there that do that. For example, demand response, virtual power plants. These are programs that are really important that we all need to be advocating for, because what they do is say, hey, customers, how about we use less electricity when there's less of it and use more electricity when there's more of it? You can do that with your energy storage system. 2026 is going to be a make or break year. Unlike a generator that just sits there till the power goes out, this one is going to be sitting there making you money. And when the power goes out, you'll have continuous power supply. So keep your eye on the storage market. Consider energy storage. Get a bid from a professional. Okay. Do you have any information on whether there are people who have solar who are upgrading versus new solar buyers? And are there more builders who are including solar in new developments than there were in the past? I would say yes and yes. We are in this interesting time in the solar industry where since 20 years ago, people started doing home solar. If you think about, if you buy a solar electric system, typically you should consider, with most systems, an inverter replacement at 15 years. Well, now we're at tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of 15-year-old systems out there that need an inverter replacement. For example, I have one on my house, a 15-year-old solar system with a Sunny Boy SMA inverter that needs an inverter replacement. So I am one of those people that's like, okay, what should I do here when I replace this inverter? Should I get energy storage? Should I increase the size of my array? And so those questions are happening more and more, even on commercial and utility scale solar. And that means if you're looking for a job, get a job in the solar industry. Don't believe the hype. The solar industry is still hiring because operation and maintenance, regardless of what happens with the development market, operation and maintenance will definitely grow because all these systems need maintenance. They need inverter replacement. They need testing. They need like all of it. So we're seeing a lot of new customers or old customers becoming new customers again. And we're also still seeing a ton of new customers. The MREA offers solar group buy programs all over the Midwest. And we had one of our most successful years ever last year. And we had said, for a lot of the programs, like, hey, the tax credit's going away at the end of the year. We want to let you know. And customers are like, we don't care. We're doing this anyway. And that's going to continue to happen this year. One of the challenges to the industry will be reducing price, reducing those soft costs, making this more affordable to customers. And one of the challenges for states are going to be like, hey, if we want to reduce electricity consumption at peak time, if we want to reduce the cost that people pay for electricity, if we want our businesses to be more competitive, what more can we do as a state through incentives to make up for the federal tax break? In Wisconsin, for example, our state public benefits program, Focus on Energy, they increased the rebate to commercial and residential customers to kind of like help make up for the loss of the tax credit. And all of this means that, yes, there are builders out there that are still thinking about solar and thinking about solar as just a common offering. That's not only solar, though. That includes energy storage. It includes smart homes, electric vehicle connections. We are still on this pathway to electrification, and many builders know that because electricity is the highest form of energy and the most efficient. Okay, what do you know about balcony solar and ways to sidestep the utilities? Well, we kind of started to talk about that. Right now, there's only really, as far as I know, one state in the country that has kind of like legalized this balcony solar. Basically, what balcony solar is you buy a full storage device and a small solar array off the internet, and then like you plug it into your wall outlet or something, and then when it's producing more than you're using, you're like backfeeding your electrical panel. Not legal, really, by the utility rules, and not NEC code compliant either necessarily. So I would say at your own risk, this isn't something we advocate. We're definitely seeing the proliferation of it, and we definitely see uses. You can have these systems not interconnected to your house and still use them for electricity. Then you can take them to a campground or take them up to your cabin or like put them in your trunk and go run power tools at your friend's site. So there's all kinds of like opportunities here for this mobile storage, which is proliferating. And like we're seeing, not only are we seeing the market proliferate, but we're seeing innovation. The first sodium ion battery has now come out in a mobile storage application. So like energy storage from salt. We're going to see solid state batteries. I just saw yesterday, now there's a solid state battery motorcycle. Like we're going to see solid state batteries, sodium ion batteries. Most lithium ion batteries are now lithium iron phosphate batteries, which are safer and more stable. And so this new mobile energy storage market is really ramping up, and it's kind of like a forecasting things to come. We'll see what more we can do with balcony solar. But again, I'm still on the page, and send me an email, try to convince me otherwise. Is like, go to a professional, get a professionally installed system. It'll do more for you. It'll be better and safer. Okay, moving on here. All right, now we're kind of done with the questions we got for our policy and technology questions, and we've got getting on into the training program questions. So besides NABCEP, the North American Board of Certified Energy Practitioners, what industry credentials, certifications are recommended for careers in solar, renewable energy, or broader energy industry? Well, we train to NABCEP, but we also support all kinds of other credentials. I mean, number one, your electrician's license. Whether it's union or non-union, there is a bright future for electricians in this country, whether you're working on clean energy or not. This is not something that artificial intelligence will replace. They're good paying jobs. They're very helpful jobs. Everybody needs electricity. There's a lot of electricity infrastructure that will be built and maintained. And this is something that will get you a solar job, because all solar companies are looking for electricians all the time. It will help you be a better friend to people. You'll be more useful. People will be asking you to come over and help them out. So I would say electrician's license. Another one is NCCER. They have a solar training program. There's basically general construction training program. So we're seeing a lot more from them and a lot more of their interest in solar. I would also say construction craft labor. That is another good one. And like as far as all kinds of certifications like OSHA, forklift operator, you name it, CDL, anything that you can do to be useful on a construction site, do it. Go out there, get the training. You'll be a better person for it. You'll be more useful, more employable. Okay. Does MREA have any plans for commercial sales training and design? Not necessarily utility scale, but like 20 kilowatt to 500 kilowatt. Yes, we just expanded some of our coursework and partnership, and we're definitely looking more at that. There's some need for that. We need more instructors that are interested in teaching that. So if you work on commercial solar and say, you're just aging or you don't have anything to do in the wintertime, you should let us know. We'll get you involved as an instructor and we'll start offering more courses. Same question for operation and maintenance. Yes, we have expanded our operation and maintenance courses. This question is specific to, should we be using our campus more for operation and maintenance, because we have dozens of systems here that range from 35 years old, we're a 35-year-old organization, to like as new as it gets, and from small residential to large commercial. So yes, we are. That's a great question because we're actively exploring that topic and hosting O&M field days. We started doing these Energy Pro field days a few years ago. So we're scoping out an O&M field day to get a full operation and maintenance experience on all kinds of inverters, all kinds of solar arrays, all kinds of battery storage. So stay tuned. Okay, now we're on to our education program questions. And I got like 7 about the energy fair. So basically summarized as, what will it take to restart the energy fair? Oh man, we would love to offer the energy fair again. We miss it. We miss seeing you all in June. I think, as I've said before, the problem is we're losing too much money. We're in a position to like lose so much money. And that's just, it takes like so much. Like basically the cliff notes are, after COVID, everything was twice as expensive and half as many people showed up. So we are surely interested in events. We'll be doing more events, all in every territory. We have group by programs. We'll be doing in-person events. We're kind of like bringing small educational events to you. We're definitely participating in a lot more conferences and exhibiting. We'll be having training events on site. We have our member event every June. Should come to that. And like, what would it take to restart the energy fair? Money, really. If we had money, if we had a donor, you might not know this, but we do get donors that fund projects. We just had a donor fund our Energy Coach program for next year. And we've had donors give us bequests. They pass away, they write us into their will. So you could make the energy fair happen. If you really love it that much, if it changed your life, you could fund it, and we'd do it. We'd revitalize the energy fair. It would give us lots of joy to do that. So we'll see. We are at the MREA, we're a business. We're a nonprofit, which means that we're a tax exempt business, but we're just a non-stock business incorporated in Wisconsin, which means that we make money and we pay bills. And when we have more memberships and when we have more donations and when we have more grants, that's when we get to do stuff that should be done, but maybe doesn't make money yet, right? The MREA is the type of nonprofit, if you have followed us for 30 years, we're the type of nonprofit that is promoting activities that should be done, but aren't quite profitable to do yet. First energy fair, there was a vendor selling solar for $80 a watt. Wasn't profitable to do, right? And same with energy storage, same with electric vehicles, same with energy efficiency applications, energy management, demand response, all of this stuff, right? Always just pushing, trying to get more of this market mainstream. And if we to do stuff that's not profitable, then somebody has to fund us to do it. That's the benefit we have, where your tax deductible contribution could throw us in a direction that you want us to go in. So just consider that. All right. Do you see any hope that the state would step in more to support neighbor-to-neighbor help, like Minnesota's Community Energy Ambassadors program, and like the Energy Coach program in Iowa? Or what should the state of Wisconsin be doing that it isn't? I just mentioned this. We are, through the generous support of a member and through a small grant through the Wisconsin Climate Action Network, we are launching an Energy Coach program. So what is energy coaching? This is going to be an incredibly important aspect of educational organizations as electricity prices increase and household income decreases. energy coaching is basically helping a home use less energy and increase the comfort of their home. In Iowa, the Winneshiek Energy District started this program. Now there's the Energy Districts of Iowa. They're offering energy coaching. In Wisconsin, the first energy district, the Vernon County Energy District, is offering energy coaching. And in Wisconsin, in Minnesota, as was referenced in the question, the CERTS program, the Clean Energy Resource Teams, started this Community Energy Ambassadors program, which is training energy coaches. And MREA was very interested in this. We offer a lot of training and curriculum. He's like, how can we train energy coaches and bring energy coaching in every community? So we will be doing more of that this year. I'm really excited to do that. I want to put a big thanks out to the donors that have made this happen. This will be our first year really expanding this program, and we're hoping to work in partnership with the good people in Iowa and Minnesota to have a regional energy coach network. So coming to you. Okay. Here's kind of a related question. Has MREA considered option package for any possible use or situation like low-income heating cooling options? Meaning like, how can we provide resources to specific types of groups? I think that is what we really are considering in this energy coach program is who are these people and how can we give them information and resources to exactly meet their needs? So that is the conversation we're having right now. So yes, we are very much considering that option. Okay. How has the MREA been so effective for so long? That's since 1990. I really like that question, and that is actually our last question. So thank you for that. And we don't always feel that effective. Let's just say that. But I guess at our 35th anniversary, one way to answer this question is our 35th anniversary, I put on an article called 35 Things the MREA Has Taught Me. And I think a couple of those things are really worth mentioning. I think the first and foremost is you have to have faith in young people. Number one, I came to the MREA as a volunteer at the Energy Fair. I worked on the garbage crew, and then I worked in the cafe, and now I'm the executive director. I was a young person, and the MREA was my people. And let me just say, what young people want, they want to be involved in something meaningful. And if you can provide a young professional meaningful work and a professional work environment, this is what they need to succeed. They need to actually be involved. So it's like, have faith in young people. If you hear somebody denigrating this younger generation, just stop them in their tracks. this just reminds me of this Groucho Marx quote, what have future generations done for us anyway? That came from our board president, Jack O'Donohue. And this really is our call as a society is to really have faith in young people and really give them opportunities because that's the future. And so MREA has done that for a whole number. We've hosted thousands of volunteers and hundreds of interns and hired people straight out of high school and straight out of college to get involved. And it's been such a benefit to us. So I'd say that's number one. Number two is never rest on your laurels, right? You can kind of see that's all this right now. It's are we like Roman society right now? And you can kind of see that. Some Roman, eating grapes on their laurels, resting on their laurels. Never. That's everything. Every win presents a new challenge. This last year is a perfect example. We were really feeling the wind in our sails, but this is the thing. This is a disruptive movement, right? This movement is about giving power to the people. The electricity system has always been monopolized. It has always been investor owned. You've always been a ratepayer, not a customer. Customers have choice. Why do we love solar energy storage so much? Because it gives you the choice. It gives you the investment. It brings you into the energy system. Same with community solar. Same with demand response programs. The same with virtual power plants. The same with groups like Solar Share Wisconsin. Makes you an investor, right? And directly benefits you and your community. But the more you do that, the more resistance. We're feeling it now. Never rest on your laurels. Always work hard. Here's another one. Never discount anybody. I see that a lot. I see that in the environmental movement. I see it in the social justice movement. I definitely see it in like this kind of like divisive partisan politics. Like you're basically, making some caricature out of somebody. Don't do that. Always give people a second chance. Always hear what they have to say. Always try to be the person that somebody wants to have a cup of coffee with. Like, I don't agree with that person, but they really seem like a good person. This is where change starts. This is where opportunities come from. This is how movements are built, right? So I think that is another big piece of MREA success. But I would say the biggest piece has been the support of our members, without a doubt. Like the MREA would never be where it is today if thousands of people every year didn't just sign up for $50 and tell everybody about us and recommend us to other people and make introductions and give us donations when you have money, or partner with us on projects and grants and contracts and attend our events. So, like, I think part of it is us being welcoming and you being generous and supportive, and we hope that continues. This was Ask Us Anything. I'm looking forward to 2026. It's going to be a challenging year. Okay, steel yourselves, stay positive, work hard, put a lot of love out there. Like, this is what the young kids do. I've been working on this one. Lots of love to you. See you soon. Thank you.